Welcome to video 5, Low EMF Lifestyle Practices. So in this video, we're going to go over some more things that we can do to help make sure that we're lowering our exposure from EMFs as much as possible, and then also some things that we can do to make sure that we're mitigating some of the effects of all of this exposure that we get in our daily lives. So how we're going to start off here is with the biggest culprit. So often the biggest source of exposure, EMF exposure for people, and that is our cell phone. So the cell phone is often our biggest source of exposure because not only is it a strong emitter of radio frequency radiation, but we're using them a lot and we're using them close to our bodies. And distance makes a big, big difference with EMF. So, over half the world owns a cell phone, and the average amount of time that people use it per day is 3 to 5 hours, average. So, this is a lot of time that we're sitting and using our phones. Now, we can use these in a safer way. Now, what we can do, the first thing we want to be mindful of is if you're using your phone and you're browsing the internet and doing all these sorts of things, holding it, you can use a wired connection that I talked about in some of the earlier videos. But also some other things that you can be mindful of when you're using your phone. Like if you are talking on a call, it's going to be less exposure for your body if you keep it far away from yourself. So using a hands-free option, using the speakerphone, and then not speakerphone and then holding it because that radiation is going to travel up your arm and into your body as well. But putting it down somewhere and using speakerphone to make a call is going to be a much better way to lower your exposure than holding it right up against your head when you're making a call. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do is when you're carrying your phone, try not to carry it next to your body. So carry it in a bag further away from your body. Every single little millimeter makes a difference with exposure. Also, flipping it to airplane mode as often as you can. You're not going to be able to get any signals. You're not going to be able to use it for any sort of communication that way. But if you're carrying it, traveling it from place to place, and it's right against your body, putting it on airplane mode is going to be a way better option for lowering your exposure than just keeping it on and keeping it in your pocket. Because the cell phones are constantly communicating with cell towers, looking for Wi-Fi signals, looking for Bluetooth devices. They're constantly pulsing out these EMFs, even if they're not actively engaged in a call or a streaming of a movie or browsing the internet or something like that. That's when they're the highest, when they're doing things like that, browsing, streaming, talking. But even when they're sitting idle, they're still pumping out some radio frequency and strong bursts sporadically. Something else you can do with your phone at home, if you have it at home and you're not using it, but you want to keep it on to get a call, then you can use shielding devices in your home. So I've mentioned this one earlier before, but it's a really great option. Just a piece of plastic picture frame with some thin metal mesh in here that does a great job of blocking radio frequency. So you can set the phone up in a corner of your house, put this in front of it so that this shield is between everyone and your phone, think line of sight. And this is going to be a good way to lower your exposure from a phone that's just sort of sitting idle near you. Often people are just going to put it near them on the couch or TV stand or something like that. But if you can keep it as far away from you as possible, put a shielding device like this radio fence in between the phone and you, then you're not really losing any functionality with it, but you are going to be lowering your exposure quite a bit. So that's something else you can do. And last but not least for the cell phone is there is some really good EMF blocking cell phone cases that you could get. Now, these come with some really proper use guidelines because if you're not using them properly, EMF blocking cell phone cases can actually increase your exposure from your phone. So that's not what you want. So I'll show you what are some tips for using a EMF blocking cell phone case properly. So this is an example of one. So this is one called Safe Sleeve. There's also a brand called Defender Shield and some others as well. I've tested Safe Sleeve and Defender Shield. They work very similarly, but they have to be used properly. So there's really kind of limited use because when you're looking at the cell phone case here, there's only shielding in this front part. So this is the only part where there's shielding. And how they're designed to be used is when the phone is inside and you close it, now this shield is blocking or limiting the radiation that's coming out of the front side of it. It's not doing anything to stop the sides and the back. It's actually increasing that a little bit as it's reflecting off this shielded front. But this shielded front, as long as you have it directed towards you, so let's say you're making a call and you're holding it against your head like this, and you've got that shielded part in front, that's better than not using any sort of shield at all. Still would not recommend it, as you're still going to be getting really high radio frequency bursts even through this, along with what you're doing by holding it and coming out the sides and the back. But what I like to do with these is, if I have it on speaker, then if I'm using it, I'll set it so that the front part of this is facing me and I'm not holding it. So that way I'm limiting my exposure by not having it close to my body, and then also using this shielding in the front directed towards me when I'm making a call can help limit it as well. And I also like to, when I just have it resting in my house, I'll put it far away in a corner with this shielded part facing me, and then I also have another screen in front of it as well. It looks like this. And this is a great way that you can limit your exposure coming off your phone as well. So some tips there. Being really mindful of how we use our cell phones is a really great way to limit our exposure to radio frequency. So some other devices to look out for around the home too are baby monitors, for example. These are a really strong emitter of radio frequency radiation. And this is especially worrisome because they're used right around babies, obviously, and when we're sleeping. So this is like the worst case scenario. So using these baby monitors is really quite worrisome because they're quite strong. So what you can do if you are using a baby monitor, often the audio only ones are going to be a little less strong than the audio and video, but really making sure you're keeping it as far away in that bedroom as possible from the little one as you can. So if you have it right up, on the side of the crib, for example, this is not so good. Put it far away from the room, even mount it up high on a wall or something like that. And that's going to do a huge, that's going to make a big difference in the exposure that the little one's getting. You can also use some shielding. So you could then put the monitor behind the radio fence, like I showed you earlier. You can drape some other sort of EMF blocking fabric, like a Swiss shield. So keeping that in between is something you can do as well. But being mindful of how we're using baby monitors is a really important thing. And don't forget about the parent unit too. So you've got the unit by the baby, but then you've also got a unit that we often keep right beside us as parents. That's not so good. So if you're doing that, make sure to keep it far away in your room, and again, use shielding in between yourself and that baby monitor. So that's something really good that you can do. And cordless phones is another big sort of emitter of radio frequency that we want to be mindful of. So cordless phones and their base stations are something that we really want to get rid of in our house, and use wired phones only would be a better option. But if not removing completely, just being mindful of the fact of where these base stations and cordless phones are, because they are emitting strong wireless signals as well. So often in our homes and in our workplaces, our workstations are usually extremely high in EMF exposure. Now that's because we've usually got multiple wireless devices. We have a whole lot of wires and cords running around. We've got machinery with fans, and so we're usually pretty high in all four types of EMFs around our workspace. Now there's lots that we can do to help clean that up. I've got a whole course on cleaning up our workspace, but being mindful of where we're working, the amount of wireless that we've got there, the amount of machinery we've got around us, and there's a lot we can do to help clean that up. But starting to take some of what we've learned through what EMFs are and what the sources of them are, and applying some of this knowledge to our workspace is going to be really important in lowering our exposure. Because if you're sitting at these spaces, or if your kids or anyone sitting at workspaces for multiple hours per day, this is a high use area. And if it's a high use area that's also really high in EMFs, not a great combo. We want to start to be mindful of how we can start to bring exposures in those areas down. And even things like when you go out for to eat at a restaurant, or going to play at a park, being mindful of also where cell towers are. I've seen some restaurants where you've got a patio and 50 feet away there's a cell tower, like 20 feet higher in the air, not even that high up. yeah, you don't want to sit at somewhere like that. So being mindful of where cell towers are is another important thing just to start to look out for. So making sure that we're sticking far away from those and choosing locations that aren't right in the path of a close cell tower is another good low EMF lifestyle practice. So as we're exposed to EMFs throughout the day, we start to hold on to some of this excess electrical charge within our bodies. And so it becomes important to clear this out. Now, one of the ways that we can do that really effectively is through grounding. This helps mitigate some of the effects of our EMF exposure. And grounding is when we are physically making contact with the earth. So walking barefoot on the earth, getting your hands in the soil with gardening, any physical contact you're making with your skin to the earth is going to be really beneficial in getting some of this additional charge out. And there's a whole range of benefits too. There's cardiovascular benefits. It decreases cellular inflammation, which can help with neurodegenerative diseases. It increases our energy, helps us sleep better. It is great for mood enhancing. And there's a lot more. There's been some really great research coming out lately over or on the effects of grounding. Now, so getting outside, getting your feet on the earth for a couple hours per day, if you can, is ideal. Depending on your climate, depending on your lifestyle, this can be tricky. So there are some other options to bring the grounding inside. So you can get things like grounding mats. So this is an example of one. And so it's an electrically conductive material that is then connected with this cord, and this connects into the ground plug of your outlet. So right here just connects into the grounded plug, which then connects into the earth as well, as long as your outlet is properly grounded. So that's how they usually work. This is from a company called Earthing. So they've got a whole bunch of products, different mats, they've got sheets, they've got bands you can wear, lots of different stuff that you can use to connect yourself. Now this is connecting, usually you connect it through that grounded outlet. I prefer connecting it directly to the earth, so you can buy a ground peg from them as well. And you can drive that peg into the soil. There's a wire from that peg that goes all the way up to your device. And so this is the way I recommend. So staking it right into the earth is my preferred method to bring the grounding inside. And there's some really great benefits that have come from this. There's a movie called Earthing that goes through it, which is pretty cool to watch. And getting a few hours a day on some grounding, whether or not you do it through outside or through some of these grounding products, is going to be a really great strategy. Now, something else that becomes really important as we are always exposed to these disharmonious fields around us of energy and all of these frequencies coming into our biofield and affecting us, and even the more subtler frequencies that we get from other people's thought patterns and their energies directed towards us, either intentionally or not, we pick up on this and this affects us. And so something that becomes really important is clearing our energy field. Now, how I like to do this is I close my eyes, I take a deep breath, and I say, universe, any energies which are attached to me, which are not mine, please help release them from my body. They are not mine to hold. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And as I do that, I imagine light coming really high up through my body. I feel it going through all parts of my body as I'm saying this, and then I imagine it coming out through my toes. And I usually do that 3 times. And it feels really, really good. It will increase my mood. If I'm feeling really tired or really sort of zapped for some reason that I can't figure out, often when I do a clearing like that, it really brings me back. And that's from different energies that have become sort of attached to my field, and it's important to clear those out. So this is a really good strategy we can use as sort of an energetic defense system and just sort of clear away any of that negativity that might be attaching itself to us. So when you start looking up EMF protection, you're probably going to be inundated with a whole bunch of harmonizing devices and crystals and things like that. So before we start trying to harmonize these frequencies and change them so that they're not as harmful to our bodies, it's much more important to remove the frequencies completely. If these are harmful, toxic, environmental pollutants around us, we want to get rid of them completely. There's always going to be some degree left over, and this is where the harmonizing and crystals and different things that work on a more subtler nature come in. But we first want to get rid of these harmful frequencies. And we do that by switching to wired connections and some of the other things that we talked about earlier. And there's a whole lot to it. So we want to clear up all these frequencies first, clear up all the energy around us and remove the harmful ones. Great. There's always going to be some left over, and this is where harmonizing devices and crystals come into play. So a few of the crystals I like are shungite and black tourmaline. I quite enjoy having those around, and they really help increase the energy of a space and can help mitigate some of the effects of EMF pollution. So something that I love to use as far as a harmonizing device, and there's a lot out there, and I've seen some good results with some, and some I've seen some not so good results. So, buyer beware sort of thing on EMF harmonizing devices. But the one that I like to use that I've seen really good results with and some good science behind is biogeometry. And biogeometry is essentially the science of how shape and form affects us. And so just to show you a little bit, so I wear mine every single day, and it also includes some clearing aspects that we have to clear these devices daily. There's a whole energy balancing system for the home. This is one part of it. There's a whole bunch else that comes with it as well. So biogeometry is something really great to look into if you haven't heard of it. That's my preferred method of harmonizing devices, but there's other great ones out there as well. So in closing, becoming aware of EMFs, what they are, where they come from, this is the most important first step, because this is a huge issue in our world, and it's one that's only getting worse. But the good news is there's a ton that we can do to help make our spaces healthier for both ourselves and all of our loved ones. Because remember, the power always lies with you. Stay healthy, my friends.